Hello, everybody.
Alright, we're in. Hello everybody, welcome to another Path of Magic live stream. Today we are going to be showing off some of the building mechanics. Because in the previous live stream, I really struggled because, well, I am in the plains and I'm in bronze gear. It may be empowered, but I let's say, got to feel the reality of that, right? So this time, I'm gonna learn lessons. And I'm going to show you how you can start building in a dangerous area in Path of Magic. Because there's actually mechanics made specifically for this purpose. We're going to be looking at two of them, the Builder's Bunker and the Builder's Bell. To begin, we'll start with the Builder's Bunker. And the Builder's Bunker is basically a safe place that builds itself, so to speak. And it's very small, and the idea is that you can start with that and then make your base more easy to work on, let's say. So let's see, we have our little nonsense chest here. And do I have... I should probably go figure out where my body is, because it probably will be useful. So I'll do that and then come back here and set up the bunker, because I'm gonna have to move things around a little bit. Let's see, I think I can take a hit from this guy. Yeah. I learned my lessons last time. I wasn't using bubble blocking. I kept forgetting that I'm in heavy armor and I move slowly. I can't just aggro an entire goblin camp and be okay. I have to remember that these things have consequences, right? So that's my attitude now. Somewhere around here, ooh, brutal. Somewhere around here is my body. I think it's just right. Oh, there it is. Oh wait, is that the chest one? There was one I was using like a chest. So I'm just gonna try and do a little retrieval here and then run away. That works actually. That works. That was a lot easier than I thought it would be. I'm not into dying and getting wrecked by all those goblins for now. Ooh, for now I'm gonna try something else. I guess this soul's pretty useful. You can use them to get a new bubble. Oh, and the Death Skeeto got distracted by him. Alright, that works. I wonder why are there so few enemies in this area? Because I didn't spawn block this area or anything. So I'm not sure why it's been so safe, in all honesty. My ghost friend, look at him. He's empowered, isn't he? Yeah, tough soul of lab rat. Not yet empowered, but getting close. Alright, so we have some scaffolding here. No, this is all just really basic stuff. So I'm going to show you how to do the builder's base mechanic, or the builder's bunker mechanic. Pretty much, you're going to build one single portal, and then you're going to get a message. So in this case, I know it's no portals, so see, nothing will happen because it's no portals. But there's another portal somewhere that's built like this that was left there, and that's why it's activating. But basically, instead of teleporting you, portals are the trigger to build a bunker. But they're not eligible everywhere. You can only use them in certain places. And to see if the place is eligible and why it's not, you just build a portal. So this spot is too close to another build area. That's kind of vague, to be honest, but it's saying that there is other build pieces around. I think in this case, it's probably the bed that's triggering it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna remove this ghost here. Let's see, I can probably survive a hit. Come on. There we go. Because now what we have to do, I have to like clear this building area. Because there's things in it that are preventing the bunker from spawning. So generally you would use a bunker in an area that you just got to that has nothing built in it. That's what they're supposed to be for. They're a way of like conquering the wilds. Make sense? So in this case though, we need to activate goblin mode to convert this tower back into pieces we can actually interact with. Although that didn't seem to work for some reason. Oh no, I remember. It's reverse goblin mode. Yeah. Reverse goblin mode. There we go. Yeah, thank you. And so that just turns it back into its original form. And you have to do that because you can't select the goblin pieces. But you can select these ones, right? So now I pretty much have to get rid of all of this stuff. And I think it's probably just the bed. Because I doubt I took the time to check for like every build piece and these 2-meter beams and the barrel. I probably just checked for the workbench and the bed and that kind of item. So I'm just gonna get rid of these and clear them up here. This will leave just because it kind of helps before. Because I know that this one is a little bit off, so that'll help us later on in the building process. So I shouldn't get rid of it. But now, let's see. Where would be an ideal spot for this bunker? It needs to be in an area where it's going to be sort of inside, right? And it makes itself deeper. So I'm not going to put it central. This is going to become kind of like a basement later on in the build. That's usually what happens. But let's do the horrible thing and get rid of our bed. See if we are instantly flooded with regret. Now let's see what happens if we try to build... Oh, I never thought about the fact they have to build a portal. But they need a workbench to build a portal. And I think the workbench... No, because the other players were able to do it. So I guess it doesn't look very far. That must be what goes on. Let's see. We're going to make a little workbench. Come on, you can do it. There we go. All right. Now let's see. You just keep doing the same thing, right? To check and see if the area is eligible. So in this case, I'm not close enough to the workbench area. So let's try right here. I'll go with that. This spot is too close to another build area. So that means that it's too close to something that is a build object, which could be these barrels. Or maybe it's the campfire, actually. I think it might have been the campfire. Yeah, there we go. It was the campfire. Okay. So see, now it says this spot might be viable. It doesn't mean for certain it is. But that's how you diagnose the area, right? So let's see if we can actually place this a little bit off to the side here. We're going to go with something like, let's see. Let's try and spawn it square over here. This spot might be viable. Okay, so you go into the center of the portal, and then you type, say, bunker. And then, what's happening? Oh. All right. There we go. Look at that. We now have our builder's bunker. So now we can claim our bed, and the bed is based on the biome that you're currently in. And each builder's bunker is pretty much the same, except it'll have some slight minor differences. You see, it comes with one workbench with no upgrades whatsoever, and one bed. And then a little chest here, you see? I'll change it so it says the person's name of the bunker. I feel like that's more endearing. So let's add that to our implementation list real quick here. Here we go. Implementation. There we are. Add player's name to bunker spawn. All right. So now you see the builder's bunker. They're quite simple, and they do a whole bunch of other stuff. You see, I actually forgot about that, which is probably going to be a little problematic. These giant things here. I don't know if that's going to help the tower situation, but maybe we'll be able to just roll with it, right? We'll lean into it and see how it goes. I'll have to look at how this looks from the outside. And also, where did the barrel go? Again, these things, they're really made to be used in an area that you haven't done anything in yet. So the barrel, seems, I bet the barrel is on the inside of this now invincible rock. The barrel with all of my stuff in it, the nonsense chest barrel. So I can access the things as building materials, right? But I can't actually put anything into the nonsense chest until I gain access into it. So I think I probably have to do some ridiculous nonsense in order to make that happen. But I'll fix this later with something. But for now, I can probably just clip into the inside of the rock. Yeah, there we go. This works. Let's talk about a secure chest, right? Holy crap. That is as secure as it gets. No monsters destroying this thing. Well, alright. That actually works. Now I can just deposit all this extra stuff we have here. And this is the point of the nonsense chest. I guess really, the nonsense chests are the other building feature. There's these three things to keep in mind. There's the builder's bunker, which as you saw there, it spawns a biome-based bunker with certain assets. And like, I should have done more tree removal and stuff, right? So now there's a tree clipped into the middle of that. But aside from that, it usually looks pretty natural. And you can't easily tell where the bunker is until you learn to like look for the abnormalities, right? Like this is obviously something weird because all of these pillars are perfectly straight and that normally doesn't happen in the plains. So you can find the bunker this way, right? And it has built-in mist protection, but normally that's what you do. You'd come in from here and then this is the entry point and then this is your super safe bunker. And all of this stuff, you can take it apart if you have a stone cutter, but it's invincible. So you want to be careful because if you take it apart, when you rebuild it, it's normal, right? In this area, it's designed to be completely safe. So I think the only monster that can cause you problems is, in some cases, a death skeeto might possibly be able to get down here. But even I was testing it when I built this, and like I built it around a bunch of monsters to see if they could get in, and they weren't able to. So the idea really is like Valheim shines when players have safety they can retreat into and danger to make that safety feel valuable. And the sort of problem with Valheim at the moment is that mechanic works really well in the meadows. That's what the meadows are. They're the safety in this dangerous world. People love looking and exploring and finding new meadows to build in, especially near more dangerous biomes. But this mechanism doesn't play out very well it starts deteriorating in mid-game and really deteriorates later on in the end of the game. Because, like, there is no meadow safety in Ashlands, for example. And I know, people think that Ashlands is just war and danger, but it needs some element of safety, because as I mentioned, the player can only appreciate danger for as much as they have the ability to make safe places to retreat back into. And Ashlands is very dangerous, right? So I was trying to figure out how can we make it so that the squishier players, the squishier builders, are more able to go and explore other areas in the game, right? That's the general idea. So now I've shown you the builder's bunker, and as I mentioned, there's one of these available in pretty much every biome except the meadows. To start, you build a portal, And that'll give you some information. Like here it says, this spot is too close to another build area, but not just that. Even if it wasn't too close, it would then say, this spot is too close to another bunker, right? So if I go a little bit further away here, and let's build a workbench, and then I'm gonna try and, let's say I tried to make a bunker over here, right? It says it might be viable. But then if I go up to it and I do say bunker, it says too close to another bunker. See? And so there's a lot of like little catches and exceptions to make sure that players don't make bunkers like under boss altars and that kind of thing, or inside another player's base. In general, you have to make the bunker in an area that you haven't really done much in yet, all right? Look at that, we're the only one online, so I'm gonna indulge in some passing the night here. And give me a moment, I need to move the rooster. People in the Spain if they think it's fine of it. And you think I don't want to wait. The bathroom. You just move the rooster on the sink. And then you use the bathroom. Then you put the bathroom to the bathroom. He doesn't mind. I'll put it in. I didn't even have to go out. Good morning. Alright, I am back now. And I'm pretty sure, honestly, that this is going to go better than yesterday did. Basically, yesterday, I didn't have a safe place to do this from. And I was doing very minimal stuff. And as you've noticed, that's something I do pretty often, right? And I kind of dig the bunker thing, to be honest. I was tripping out about the nonsense chest, but now that we have this little hack here, I think it's all right. I'm just kind of gonna accept it. And these things are, if I remember right, they're invincible. So it's not like I can like do something to it with a pickaxe. I've been meaning to give players a way to make things uninvincible, because builders have a lot of other tools available, right? Like this one is the builder's bunker, but the other one I wanted to show you is the builder's bell. So along the veins of how do we make the building experience more enjoyable, one of the things I noticed is that builders tend to stay in the safer areas. I assume because it's hard to build when monsters are killing you. So why not make a way for builders to fear monsters? Make sense? So we've made this little hallway somehow here. And I guess the best place for the builder's bell, for now, we'll just put it right here. It doesn't really make sense because this area is very safe. But for illustrative purposes, that's what we can do. So to make a builder's bell, you make 3 wood chairs, like right next to each other, all in the same spot. And then they'll get converted into a builder's bell. And I've shown this before, but the builder's bells are like fear triggers, basically. So you strike it, and you can punch it, you can hit it with a weapon, you can even shoot an arrow at it, and it'll trigger. And that then fears all enemies nearby. They run away, and they disappear without dropping any loot. So you can go to an area, get a builder's bell placed, strike it, and it makes this sort of, for the most part, bubble where enemies can just be instantly dealt with, and then they'll stop trying to attack you and they'll leave. And that gives the builder more time to get situated in the first place. Because personally, I hate trenches. Like, they're just so ugly and nasty. And it's sad that in a game that is so beautiful and about building awesome things, where there's a lot of depth to using defenses, that like the meta is to just build ugly earth trenches. Like, so I don't want to attack players who do that. I want to give them better options. So there's no need to make trenches, because you can make a bunker and you can use a builder's bell to expel enemies. So like, do I need to surround this bunker with a trench? Or can I just come over here and strike this until I get proper defenses made, right? Because as I mentioned, what Valheim shines on is, or shines with rather, is having danger where there is safety as well. It's this combination of danger and also safety to retreat into. So that's the mentality building these mechanisms, is we want to make things more approachable for builders. Because in general, most Valheim players stick to the early game and they don't do much mid-game or late-game stuff. And the general idea on Path of Magic is we want to incentivize that as much as possible. And you know what? I was talking about moving these pillars, but I'm just going to work with it. I'm going to integrate these pillars into the design of the tower temple thing. So we're still going to do the spiral thing where it goes through here and up there. And I'm just going to use the pillars, and maybe the structural support will help. So that's also another thing. Again, lots of building tools on Path of Magic, and more to come. But the reason I was talking about the Builder's Bell and the Builder's Bunker is because one other thing I've noticed is that builders really benefit from being able to make assets invincible. I know that that's not fair, that they can make a rock that like no enemy can destroy or whatever, but look, they make trenches, and if we don't give them other options, they're just gonna keep doing the trench meta. And even if we give them all these other options, they're gonna keep doing the trench meta until they learn better, right? It still takes players a while to unlearn bad habits, even if you give them better options, because the weight of those habits is so strong that you need to then kind of do something to shake the situation up, so that the player will then start doing the new option, right? And this is all experimentation. But for now, looks pretty solid. We've showed off the Builder's Bunker. I've talked about the invincible vegetation stuff. I won't get too much into that, but there's ways that players can, basically using ancient seeds and certain other items. They can make entire areas respawn, they can make individual vegetation invincible, but they don't have a way to make individual vegetation uninvincible. So I'll have to work on that. But for now, we got our bell, and I guess that means that we can get back to trying to more patiently fight some goblins. Because we got loads of goblin loot earlier, if I just run back out here again. There's this goblin camp that respawned, but I'm not too worried about that. You see, what I'm trying to go for is the cart right there. We have some interlopers though that might get in our way, but it looks like the area is clear of flying monsters, so that's good. Let's I'm gonna see if I can just quickly. Uh-oh, that sounds bad. I don't like how that sounds. Oh, now I'm carrying too much. Not anymore. All right, let's just. I'm gonna see what follows me. Oh, a level 1 fueling. Okay, here we go. I gotta get this fueling to melee me without getting killed by the death skeeto or the goblin shaman. Uh-oh. Whew. And as I mentioned before, you get extra loot when you fight stuff inside these special areas, right? So in the plains locations, there's sort of an incentive. Ooh, that was brutal. Haha. I didn't know I could bubble block out of the fireball attack. For some reason, I thought that it would hit through the shield and get me. Oh. Oof, close. I don't want to fight that lock. Locks are a pain, to be honest. They are really strong. I'd much rather fight a goblin than a lox. Yeah, you don't have to see me. Thank you, thank you. I see why Pan gets frustrated by the knockback from the shield. Because you have to, like, knock the enemy into a wall or something, right? And it's hard to get that stagger on them. But I like it. I find it really useful when you're fighting with melee and you're fighting like 10 enemies. Without the knockback, like, it's too easy to get surrounded, pretty much. So I personally love the knockback. I think it's hilarious that they get thrown and yeeted backwards, and you can use that to, like, angle where they go, right? So I can aim this way, and then he'll like yeet himself that way each time he attacks, right? So you could throw them off a cliff, you could do all sorts of stuff, and that's happening that intensely because this is an empowered tower shield, right? So it has an absurd 215 level block force. And if you do get too frustrated with that, just remember that you can bypass it pretty much. Just make sure that you get the fueling against something, and then they basically, like, you can just stun them and they'll go right into the wall but still be within your own melee distance. So I consider it more of a feature or a perk than something bad, but you know, everyone's entitled to their own opinion here. So what do we want to do about this goblin camp? See, I got this cart. Oh, the cart's 3,000 pounds though. I'm probably gonna struggle to move that, I would assume, at least. Let's see. Let's take one of these stacks of metal and just take it back to the other base. Oh, can we hold 2 stacks of metal? That's crazy. What are they even fighting? I don't think they saw me. This guy did. They saw something else, like a deer, I'm assuming. But for now, let's see. You see, I'm doing better. I haven't died yet. Gotta give me credit. Although I did just lose my bubble, which is bad news bears. Let's bring this fueling over to this handy dandy empowered tough verger mage guy. He seems to handle the situation pretty well. Ooh, I just ran through that. That was stupid. Brutal. Yikes. Oof. Those guys are so strong. Yeah, as you can tell, the planes on Path of Magic isn't like normal planes. There's a lot of different situations that can come up. And we actually, in the previous stream, only saw 2 of like 20-something different occurrences. So there's actually a whole bunch of them. And I was surprised because normally when I set weights in the beginning, I mess it up. And I set the weights too high. And I have to reduce them a bunch. But it looks like this time I may have done the opposite. So I set the rates too low, and that's a lot of what the playtesting is basically like when you make the mechanic, you'll understand the logic of how it needs to work and what your intention is. But then what's really hard to get right the first time is the chances of things happening and like how much damage something should do or how much health something should have. You could think, or it's easy to think that, oh, it's just linear, you know, if it's later in the game, it has a lot of health, earlier in the game, you really have to playtest stuff. So I've found that, like, you shouldn't even bother wasting your time trying to get it right the first time. Just set it for some random thing and then playtest it. And the playtesting is going to show you exactly what needs to happen. You'll need to reduce the rates or increase the rates. And that's it. And you can't really know that unless... Oh, a Meadows Builder's box? Sorry, I got distracted there. Ha! So you can't really know about those rates until you playtest. And that's why I'm saying you can't really get it right the first time. Your logic and your mind is going to make you think that you can, but you can't. You gotta just pick something, move forward, and get playtesting done. The playtesting is gonna give you the truth. It's gonna tell you what you really need to do, right? And now that I've finished that rant, I can talk about the builder's boxes, because as I mentioned, I want to make sure that players can just stay in one area near a dungeon or near like goblin camps and just keep fighting those to get a variety of resources to somewhat of a theme, right? Well, the goblin camps give you a bunch of stone and metal. As you've noticed, I've been getting obsidian, I've been getting some black marble, but mostly stone, black metal, iron, growlstone, etc. The goblin camps give you more of those kind of building materials. But then also, whenever you're in a location in the plains and you're killing stuff, you get an increased chance of getting builders boxes. And builders boxes are items that are very rare, that drop and are meant to be like an inspiration for the player by giving them a whole bunch of stuff and be like, maybe you'll make something out of this. That's the idea, right? So in this case, I'm just gonna kick this box around because it's full of a bunch of weight, and if I try and loot it, then I'm going to have to go back and forth. So let's see if we can make this work here. Just got to get it a little bit closer. I'm just gonna ignore how unrealistic it is that this box of 2,000 pounds acts as if it's light as a feather, regardless of how much weight it is. I've found personally that fun is way, way more important than realism. And there's a lot of game mechanics that are made with realism in mind that actually serve against the game. So, like, the developers will be doing something, and then they're like, oh, you know what happens in real life? Well, in real life, things happen, right? Like, in real life, when fire burns, it's part of the natural life cycle, and it helps make fertile ground and everything, right? So I'm sure that's probably something to do with why in Valheim, when fire burns, it turns the ground into cultivated ground. It's realism, right? But that's the thing. I don't know. I have a thing for when game designers put realism in for the hell of it, or for the heck of it. And it's like, okay, how are the players going to use that? What purpose does it serve them? Is it fun? Like, that's what matters. Not like, is it realistic? Because we're talking about a video game. So, like, I get why people talk about realism, because it makes it, like, more predictable for the player, right? Because they're used to the real world. So the argument is, when you make things realistic, it allows the player to then get immersed into the game more easily, because the game is functioning similarly to the world that they're used to. I guess how logically it sounds like that might make sense when you say it that way. But in practice, people know they're playing a video game. They're not expecting it to be real. They're expecting it to be like their expectation of video games. So yes, there are some realistic elements, you know? You can take damage from fighting and die, but then you just come back to life. Like, that's not realistic at all. Like, if you want to go the whole realism route, everything has to be photorealistic graphics with hardcore death, where everything you do in the game is completely removed when you die. Literally, like, your game itself is removed when you die, right? Because when you die in real life, you lose your ability to experience everything. So basically, we need to make a game that is realistic. We need to make a game that has photorealistic graphics, where when you die, your computer just disappears, basically. Like, who wants that? No one wants that. That's why, like, I don't understand why we care so much about this realism notion in video games. Like, it really doesn't matter that much, you know? Like, realism matters to the point where you need to understand player psychology, and especially if your players or your target players, if your target players are people who haven't played video games before, yeah, you need to think about realism more, let's say, right? But if you're talking about normal gamers, like, oof, realism's more of a problem than an aid, in my opinion. But no one asked me, so it's all right. All right, what I'm gonna do is, I guess I can just keep blocking. Hope I don't aggro that locks. And what we want is for one of these tribunal elders to teleport to me, because then I can take advantage of the teleport. There we go. Ah, I lost my bubble. Ooh! Yeah, that one from behind, he snuck in. I don't think I can survive a hit anymore, so I'm gonna try and skedaddle a little bit here. Let's change our strategy here. So I'm gonna kind of circle around this shaman, and he is a level 1 summoner, a non-starred shaman. So we'll be able to kill him quickly if we just wait for the right moment. They should, yeah, when they teleport, that's normally the right moment. There we go. Uh-oh. Ah, yeah, the other one got me. Yeah, I got him just in time. Just in time. Oh, it's a good thing I remembered my spawn spot, right? I'll spawn in the safe bunker, right? Yeah, yeah. I hope so. I really hope so. The previous stream basically started with me dying and having to walk all the way back here. Which is not a good start. And another mechanic on Palm, as you see, when you spawn on a bed, you're going to get some bread. Makes sense? So here we can loot the bread that way, or eat the bread. And basically that allows us to run around with more food, because I don't really like it when the game makes players corpse run or run around with 25 health. Like, I get that that's a punishment so that you're prepared, but I don't think it's necessary, because preparation is inherently very important and valuable. It doesn't need, like, players don't need to be punished for not preparing by then having a frustrating experience while they try and get their body back. At least I don't think so. That's my opinion about it. And I'm managing the server, so so that makes it relevant if you play on the server. But I know that, like, I developed for a pretty niche play style, to be honest. So I don't really expect players en masse to enjoy the same mentality that I use on Palm. It's not that I think that there aren't people who will enjoy it. It's just that I understand that, like, I enjoy a no map, no portals, Dark Souls building experience, pretty much. That's what I like. And that's just not for most people. And that's okay. I know what I enjoy, and I'm making that. And the people who play tend to be more interested in that kind of thing. It's funny too, because you would think a server on very hard mode with, like, all this high difficulty stuff, you would think it would attract, like, more combat oriented players. But the players who have stayed more, there's more people who do building stuff. And it looks like those are the people who, like, I've regretted saying this before, but I think most people who play Valheim long term do it because they got into the building. That's really the thing that helps them. And even like in the case of Arena World, which is a completely PvP server, it's a really, really awesome thing to check out. If you've never done, like, Valheim PvP and you've wanted to, Arena World is, oh, it's a great place to check out. It's basically a custom server that is full of PvP game types. So you join it and it's like a normal Valheim world, except you join and then there's like 30 or 40 different places you can go. And when you enter each place, it starts like a PvP match of that type, and there's a lot of automation, and they've minimized downtime a bunch. And it's super, super, super cool. But even then, I see that they're able to do that PvP because they're building a PvP community and they're building a PvP server with arenas and stuff. And when they fight, they think about new projects and things to work on, and they build new things. So ultimately, Valheim is a game about over-preparation and building. That is, like, at its core, what it's about. I know that they say, they just being general people, I'm not specifically talking about the developers, but people say that Valheim is about, you can explore, you can build, you can fight. I think that's a not necessarily accurate way to explain the game. Because it's true that Valheim does have, you can look at it that way, right? There is building, there is fighting, and there is exploring. But that's only in the very beginning of the game, and maybe in the first, let's say you have less than 100 hours of Valheim experience, then yeah, you may have a more balanced experience between the building, the fighting, and the exploration. But how many of you listening who have thousands of hours in the game feel that you can still just explore in Valheim and like it stay interesting and you feel like you're exploring? And so how many of you feel that when you're playing on normal difficulty and you progress, that the combat remains interesting? Because I don't know about you, but the building is the only thing from my perspective that actually scales in the long run of the player. And when people talk about there being combat and there being people who fight and there being building and builders, I think this is all like they're archetypes that we think about, but I don't know how accurate they actually are. Because nobody is like just a builder or just this. They all have different behavior patterns and they change over time depending on what's going on in the person's life, etc. So like I get it, but I feel like there's more accurate ways that we can explain Valheim, because we need to understand that when the player joins in the very beginning, the way they play fundamentally is different than after they've been playing for 100 hours, and after they've been playing for 500 hours, and after they've been playing for 1,000 hours. Like, it changes throughout that entire process, and it's just not accurate to say that it's building, combat, and exploration, because it's only really like that in the beginning of the game. And then you very quickly get to a point where it's all about the building and a little bit about the combat and not about the exploration. And then you very quickly get to a point after that where it's only about the building, because the combat, unless you're playing on a higher difficulty, and I don't know, maybe those of you listening can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when I played Valheim on normal mode, the armors and things are like so strong that you can sort of just get an armor that allows you to just ignore combat in all the biomes up to that point. It's not as true in the Mistlands and later on, because I think even in normal Valheim, there is an issue of those things scaling, right? Like, melee is not as strong, even in normal mode, as ranged or magic. That's just the reality, right? That's just how it is. But it's more obvious in the higher difficulty modes, that's for sure. And for me, I'm not trying to be critical at all. I'm just trying to point out that there are misunderstandings that we have. You can imagine it like this, that Valheim players have a culture. They have a belief system. And I've come to believe, my belief system is, that most of what we think about Valheim, most of what the average Valheim player thinks and does is not necessarily accurate to the game itself. So there is a huge cultural reality where most Valheim players do not play Valheim. I mean, I know you could argue, well, they're not really Valheim players then, they just played Valheim. But hear me out. Valheim is a game that got most of its popularity in a time when a pandemic forced billions of people on this earth to stay inside more than they normally would. And then those people were put in situations where they were exposed to games, and they played games with their friends who were normally not even that interested in games, but everybody was playing games during the pandemic. Not literally, but I mean, even though the health organizations were telling us to play more games, like, very much it was a thing, right? And this led to loads of people playing Valheim all at once. A huge, huge spike in popularity that was then never met again, even anything close to that. A lot of us hoped that when Ashlands came out, that something similar would happen, but no, Bogwitch and Ashlands were comparable updates. And as far as player activity went, and even Valcon itself was comparable in the player activity spike that Valcon created for that weekend was comparable to the Bogwitch update. So we have to just understand that most Valheimers, the Valheim in their head is a Valheim that doesn't exist anymore, that existed 3 years ago. And if you don't understand that, you're going to get very, very confused when you read social media and you see people talking about things and you know how it actually works because you've been developing, and you're like, what? Like, why do they think that? Like, there's still posts talking about how terrain changes cause lag. Even though that issue, I mean, don't get me wrong, Valheim has loads of multiplayer lag issues, but that terrain issue was solved years ago, like literally years ago. Yet it's still part of a normal Valheim player's psychology to believe that you should refrain from adjusting the terrain too much because you're going to cause lag. And what's so funny is they think it's all about instance counts, but people don't understand that an instance is just a number one per game object. All game objects are not equal. You can have a game object that is equal to 1,000 other game objects, or vice versa. So looking at instance counts as the definitive measure of lag and latency in these things, oh, it's highly problematic. Like, it's just not accurate. It's the best number the player can cling to, that they have access to, right? There's their frame rate and their instance count. So of course, they're going to come to conclusions using the information that is presented to them. Because what other numbers are they going to look at? Can they see the resource count or the polygon count of all of the instances in their area? No, they can't see any of that. All they see is a number. So again, it's game design that begets the psychology and the behavior in the players. And welcome, Forbes. Welcome. Sorry I didn't respond earlier. I was in my rant mode there. And this is a little part of the design philosophy on Palm. It's like, how do we get players to change their behavior and play in ways that are more fun and use other mechanics when they think that things work a certain way and they think that they know, right? And this is one of those issues that I really love learning more about, because it's pretty advanced stuff that is normally challenging to get experience doing. And it's a huge fundamental of any game design situation. Like, Valheim is not unique in that sense, but it is unique in the sense that whenever you develop for Valheim players, you sort of have to understand that they're pretty, how do I put it? They're a superstitious bunch. And there's things that they believe, and because they believe them, you have to develop around what they already think. So you have to kind of understand that because they think this thing is a problem, they're not going to even try the mechanic you've made because it doesn't make sense to their existing worldview of Valheim, right? It's like, so you have to develop mechanics that work within their existing Valheim worldview, because otherwise they won't even think they're possible, right? Like, how many palm mechanics exist that players won't even try because they don't even, like, they have no idea that it's even possible for a server to do that because they didn't install any mods. So in their head, it's vanilla Valheim. There's nothing to it, right? That's how it seems. So let's make sure I don't lose my bubble here. We're gonna take advantage of bubble blocking, and oh, I lost my bubble. See how easy that is? And now these things will kill me in one hit, so I have to be a little bit careful here. Mr. Pack Leader here. He's the one who's gonna nerk me, whereas that 2-star spear fueling will also nerk me. So I have to somehow make sure that I'm fighting the normal spear fueling here, and he's gonna be my salvation. Oh, nope. The other spear fueling got me. Oh, that was brutal. Absolutely brutal. Now, I've been toying with the idea of, like, do I like that you have basically having some weak enemies around becomes a mechanic that allows players to fight stronger enemies. And I like that. But again, it's the same issue that I was just talking about. Whenever you develop a feature, you have to know how players already think about the game, right? And like, one of the puzzles, the nuts I'm trying to crack, is melee. Getting melee to feel more viable to the player, right? That's very tricky, because even when melee is powerful, like, as you see, I can use the bubble blocking system and I can utilize what I know about it to make weak enemies enable me to fight a strong enemy. So because of the bubble blocking system, a 2-star goblin is harder to fight than a 2-star goblin with a normal goblin. But that's very abstract. That is not something that your average Valheim player is going to be able to figure out until they really have let go of a lot of what they already think about Valheim, right? And so the hardest part of developing mechanics, it's not making the mechanics. It's not even coming up with the ideas. It's learning, and I say learning because you can think you know players, and I talk like I know what I'm talking about, right? But that's just how I talk. Like, I am often wrong, and it's a whole learning process of figuring out how I'm wrong. And I found that by saying things with confidence, it increases the rate at which I learn things, because when I say something confidently and I'm wrong, someone points it out, and then I'm like, ah, yeah, shit. And then I learn about it. But if I never said it in the first place, no one ever tells me I'm wrong, because they never know, and then I don't learn, right? So that's why I'm not really afraid of being wrong, because the more often I'm wrong, that means the more often I'm learning. And I'd rather be learning about things, because then I can understand them. And that's the tricky part. It's learning what you think you know that is wrong. And that's the part that you really have to observe players for. And I think kind of what happens is server creators, they spend a lot of time creating alone, or we spend a lot of time creating alone, right? And that makes this kind of dynamic where it's really easy to get very lost into the way you play and how you think people are going to handle the situation, right? But that doesn't mean that other people are actually going to handle it that way. That means you think that's how other people behave. but it's not necessarily accurate, right? Oh, I lost my bubble. I need to get hit by this guy. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, this is what I'm talking about. When you know what you're doing on Palm, it's actually easier to melee fight a whole group of enemies than it is to fight one really strong enemy. Because you can just keep using the bubble shield and the blocking, right? Oh, I'm gonna die, yeah. But then the moment you take 2 hits in a row without holding block, you're dead. So I love that. And this mechanic... Ooh. 1 second, I got all choked up. I need some tea. All right. But this mechanic is actually a test of a rework to health that I want to do in video games that I make in the future. Because a lot of what you see on Palm, especially if you feel very confused by it, like if you're like, why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. It's probably because I'm testing out a theory or an idea, and I'm trying to learn a different approach to something. You can think of the mechanics on Palm as prototypes for these theories and ideas. Because if I wait until I make a game, I'm gonna waste a lot of resources and money, right? Whereas if I practice in Valheim, in this server, where I can try things for free and get them playtested for free, then I'm going to develop my skills to a point where when I do make a game, I already know what to do because I've already tested the theories, right? And the bubble block system is a test of a rework on health. I think that we've been being very lazy with health in video games. Basically, since the pen and paper D&D era, health is a numerical value, right? You have 70 health. You can get more health and incentivize the player to get more health. Enemies can damage you. You can decrease the rate at which they take away that health. Okay? Enemy does 10 damage. Strong enemy does 30. Weak enemy does 1. Sometimes enemy does none. You got it? Health hits 0, you die. Okay? This is the system that we have been reusing over and over and over and over and over again continuously. And I hear you. I know you're like, well, it works. And look, yes, I get it that it works. But I don't believe that it's effective in the modern era where the system has been used hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of times across video games. It's so overused that people think it's necessary, but it's not. And why do I care so much about the health system? Because why does it matter, right? Why do I care that we are influenced by this archetype from so long ago? Like, if games can be fun with health systems, why do I bring it up like it's such a big deal? And that's because I believe that a long-term immersive game is harmed by linear progression. There is a lot of problems when you make players progress through a game linearly using mathematics. You ensure that they fall off of the hedonic treadmill, so to speak. A game needs a balance, and it somehow needs to find a way for players to take breaks from it without getting completely burned out. So certain games, they get you so into it that you play it so obsessively that your life cannot accommodate that, and you end up having to stop or quitting, or something happens, or you become depressed, right? So this is why the psychology of everything is so relevant. It's not simple. You can think that, oh, a great game has a person playing it all the time, all day, because it's very fun. Like, that makes sense if you say it, but in practice, it's not that simple. a very addictive game functions that way. And you can think that addiction and good are the same. I would wager they're not. A good game can become addictive, but that's not the same as the game being designed in an addictive manner. Make sense? Like daily quests, for example. This is addictive game design. It is designing a mechanic that is purely intended to make the player feel like they have to log in each day. This is not the kind of game design I'm interested in, because it's forcing the player to do something in a way that I believe has long-term consequences. If you really want players to log into your game should be fun. Then players will log in. I mean, it's not very complicated, is it? It's complicated to make the game consistently fun to multiple different kinds of players for an extended period of time. Yes, absolutely. That itself is a challenge. But the concept, the notion that mechanics themselves, the idea of getting a player to have fun, and that's why they come back to your game, that's not very complicated to understand. You don't need to make purposeful addictive mechanics that artificially make the player feel like they have to log in to make a game enjoyable. They are fundamentally different things. The game should be enjoyable enough that players can try new strategies and see results, experience failures, and experience successes. This adds depth to the game. And depth is very, very important. Players need to be able to feel like they can change things up and try something different and experience a different outcome. It's very, very important. Oh, he's a tough goblin. I see. I get it now. Oh, I missed the block. Uh-oh. Ooh, that guy almost got me. Yikes. Okay, I gotta run here. I'll focus on combat for a minute. I might be alright because Ooh, a ghost. Save me, ghost. Save me. Oof. Alright, there we go. Now's my chance. Yeah. It's so funny to purposefully take the spear. Like, that is definitely not something I'm used to. Alright. I gotta hold this up. This guy's gonna keep attacking me. So I basically only get a break from him when he lands an attack. And then he gets thrown back, right? So I guess what I should do is thin these packs. Let's take them somewhere I can fight them in a little bit more comfort. Here we go. Uh-oh, uh-oh. I keep trying to unequip my stuff, but I'm pressing the wrong button. There we go. Oof, oof. So glad for jumping. And then, I gotta say, that feeling of the moment you put the tower shield away and you get 20% more movement speed, it feels pretty nice. Not gonna lie, it feels pretty awesome. And this is gonna be an easier place to fight enemies as well, because we can get the bubble block in and stun them backwards, right? There we go. Okay, so now I should be good. As long as I keep this bubble up and I don't lose it, then this goblin can't really do much to me. There we go. So I don't know if you could tell the dynamic here, but this is what I'm going for. I believe that health systems completely remove depth from combat if it's a linear progression health system of X health, X damage done, Yeah, you can make it a little bit more interesting by adding different damage types, which is what games do. There's lightning and resistances to all this, and etc., etc., etc. I don't find it to be actually it's like putting a band-aid on a big wound. You know what I mean? Like, does it really... That's not a good metaphor. It's more like there's something that's hurting you regularly, and each time you get hurt, you put a band-aid on, you know? Like, you mop the floor in the morning, and then you wake up and you slip because the floor is wet, and then you take some ibuprofen for your headache. And you take ibuprofen every day because you mopped the floor and then you fall. You know what I mean? It's better to just change the circumstance so you don't do that thing anymore that is hurting you, right? And that's what I mean about the depth. I think that if you notice in the fight we just had, for example, I have to pay attention. And as long as I pay attention to all the projectiles and everything that's happening, and I make sure that I'm blocking and only attacking when I'm not going to get hit in that moment, I can stay alive against multiple enemies, even 2-starred enemies. Notice that, right? It adds this depth where the player feels a lot of benefit from learning mechanics. And I think that that is key. It's like a consequence of using a normal health system is shallow combat. And it won't show itself, this issue, this consequence I'm talking about, won't show itself straight away. It shows itself much later on in the game's progression cycle, once you've fought a lot of things. So let's say you're making a game that is a story-driven, single-player game. Honestly, linear progression is great. There's nothing wrong with it in that situation. But when you're making a game that you want to have replayability, and you want to have multiplayer, and you want people to feel immersed in the game, linear is a problem. It is a huge problem, a big, big problem. And that's why games like World of Warcraft, like if you look at the classic World of Warcraft experience, the thing that made it so great was the act of getting up to level 60. It was that linear progression, but as soon as you hit 60, you have to make a whole new game to entertain people, because you lose all of that linear leveling progression feeling. You lose access to it. And that is what happens with linear games. When you use numbers going up, it feeling good as your gameplay loop, there's a point where you can't make the numbers go up anymore because they've become meaningless. So it's not a long-term effective way to create immersion in a game world. And so instead of just criticizing that, I'll now give you an alternative. Because oh, he's gonna get me. And he healed? Oh no, I killed him. Okay, I killed him right at the last moment. Okay, that's good. But let's take a moment to look at immersion itself. Because everything I'm talking about with this health system, it's all about how it relates to getting the player to feel immersed in a world that isn't real. Right? Because that's what these game worlds are. They're not real in the sense that the player's personal physical experience is real, right? So you start out at a huge disadvantage because the player is very acutely aware that this is pixels on a screen. It's not real, right? That, however, is an immersive problem. And immersion comes from things, from experiences, right? I think I understand what actually the true origin of immersion in a game. I think I understand what it is, but I can't just say it because it won't make sense. I have to explain all the context behind it that layers up to that point. Because when we join these game worlds, they don't matter, right? Like, they really are quite literally fake. They're not real. So how do you get a player to become invested in something that is to give them an experience that ties into numbers, and then give them a way to make those numbers go higher? This is the basics of linear progression. You can think of a game as a cartography or an encryptor. The player is sort of the input, and the game is the cipher. It's the thing that converts the player's input into some kind of output that is the experience of the player playing the game. That's how I look at it. So really, when you do linear progression, that's what you're doing. You are tricking the player into caring about numbers getting higher. And in RPGs, that is a big part of it. And you ride this wave of immersion that comes from the player temporarily being tricked into feeling like these things matter. But that's the problem with linear progression. The illusion is not actually very strong in the long run. It's only powerful in the very beginning. Linear progression produces a very powerful immersion experience at first. And then this experience becomes exponentially weaker until it's so weak that the player can't even bear to play the game. It can't hold their attention. They stop playing. So when you do linear progression, you are focusing on the short term. And again, that can be good. But on a server with multiple people joining over time, it's not a good idea to focus on linear progression. So, I know if you're listening, you're like, but Jack, all games are numbers. That's why I play games. I know that most gamers have this fixation on numbers. And we think that it is all the numbers. What if I tell you that that's actually a secondary effect? There's something underneath the numbers that's really causing the fun. The numbers are a red herring. Yes, it's true, we use the numbers in data, and yes, it's true, the player gets access to numbers, and this builds a sense of progression because they can see the sword does 100 damage, it used to do 20. I'm stronger now, I've improved. Dopamine go up, so to speak. But that doesn't work in the long run. So how do we get players to feel immersed in a sustainable, long-term viable manner? Well, here's the truth of it. The immersion doesn't come from the numbers. Immersion always comes from interactions with other humans. And so you might say, but single-player games exist. Yes. But what if I tell you that single-player and multiplayer is irrelevant? I am playing this game alone at the moment, yet I am speaking to you. I am interacting with you. I am making content about it. I've been able to play Valheim for thousands of hours, not uniquely because Valheim itself is that incredible of a game. I've been able to play Valheim for thousands of hours because I've gotten involved with communities of people who really care about Valheim and love it. That is the key. The moment you have a conversation with another individual, the moment you even speak about Valheim and someone else listens, you are now tapping into the true reality of why we get immersed in video games. We get immersed in video games because we are fundamentally lonely. We exist in a time where most humans do not get the support that they need. And most people, deep down, feel fundamentally alone, despite the reality that we are surrounded by millions, billions of other people. We feel alone. And I'm gonna get into some deeper stuff here. Hear me out. You may not agree with me, but I believe that most gaming, I'm not gonna use the word coping mechanism, and I'm not gonna use the word escapism, because I don't think it's that simple. Instead, I'm gonna explain it as reaching for comfort. Humans reach for comfort in response to trauma in their lives. There's lots of different kinds of trauma, lots of different things that can happen to a person that make them suffer. But regardless to the origin of their suffering, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, mental, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, the suffering itself comes from similar things. Or the experience of the suffering is similar, in the sense that the human will naturally want comfort to relieve themselves of their suffering. And the player is a human who more likely than not is attempting to relieve themselves of some kind of uncomfort through playing a game. And that uncomfort that they're relieving themselves from could be loneliness. It could be boredom. It could be an escape from a very unpleasant situation that they have to deal with in their life. You know, a lot of people who play games all the time find that their physical existence isn't worth being in. It's miserable. It feels meaningless, right? So when you develop, if you don't understand this, the depth of your creations will be reduced. Because if you view everybody as just being okay and looking for some fun times in a video game, you're essentially going to miss a lot of the depth that is available. Because by understanding that your players are inherently suffering, you then open the door to making a situation that's different. Because if you believe that your players are suffering, then you're one step away from believing that the game can do something to help that suffering. Whereas if you believe that players are just bored and they need to be entertained, the level of depth you can provide them, I would argue, is impacted. It's reduced. Because immersion itself comes from experiencing comfort in response to suffering. So in a video game, the moment that the video game makes you feel good in any way whatsoever, it now has the potential to become immersive. Because you want to feel good because you don't feel good enough in general. This is what I mean when I say people are suffering. If people weren't suffering, they wouldn't be looking to escape. They wouldn't be looking for entertainment. They wouldn't need it because they're inherently okay with what's already going on. But people aren't. We live in a time where most people are unsatisfied with what is happening. So you can make a lot of money by selling them things and convincing them that the things you're selling are going to satisfy them. It's a lot easier to lie to them than it is to produce something that is truly satisfying. But if you don't understand what's going on with people in the first place, well, you're just going to have a really tough time, right? And this is all a really long rant here about my feelings on game development and the health system. I know it seems like it's not related, but it is. Because I believe that the player needs to be killable all the time, pretty much. Unless they're in a place of safety. But when they're in a place of danger, even if they're super powerful with the best possible gear, the moment the player stops focusing, they should be killed. Because games, in order to help people, they need to teach people to manage their attention and focus. And this is where games can really, really thrive. I know that it seems silly, but I believe that games like Dark Souls make people better. Because they don't reward quick reactivity. They don't reward the mindset that makes you suffer. Instead, they reward the mindset of patience, taking your time, doing things slowly, analyzing the situation to figure out what's going on. Right? I was so close to killing him. And then I did the Dark Souls thing, you know what I mean? Where you go in for that third swing, but you know that that's greedy, and you should have just been doing two and been patient. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That may seem like it's completely unrelated to human happiness, but I believe that people suffer because we are surrounded by so much convenience that we learn to strip away the very things that we need to be happy. We need to be patient, to take our time, and to accept what is already there. But when you play games that min-max your time constantly and are just incentivizing you to just do meta, and you're only talking to other humans about the fastest way to do things, and when you do something slowly, people complain to you, and when you do something with a non-optimal strategy, you hear about it, people get mad at you, people get frustrated. And this is all very harmful for humans in the long run. And I know that it seems like a stretch. I'm talking about things that are pretty hard to wrap the head around. How does Dungeons and Dragons, a linear progression health system, video games, and human psychology all come together, and how does this mean that the way combat is handled in a video game can make humans happier? Like, I get that you won't believe me, but that's just my mentality. I do things very indirectly. So I look for things that I can adjust that influence something else to happen. Make sense? So instead, let's say I wanted to make this goblin harder to fight. The direct way to do it would be to increase the goblin's damage. Right? That's the direct mentality. That's how people normally try and do things. They try and force them to occur. Yeah? But that's not very fun. That's the linear progression problem we're talking about. You can increase the goblin's damage, and maybe that makes the goblin more challenging. But after a certain point, does it even do anything? Like this goblin, he's gonna kill me in one hit. No matter how much health I have, no matter what food I use, he's going to kill me in one hit. Unless I have a bubble block up. So if I increase his damage, is the actual experience any different? Well, no, because he already kills me in one hit. So increasing his damage will do absolutely nothing. And that's exactly what happens most of the time you try and force something to happen in this world. You can think if you just force this, then it'll do that. But oftentimes in practice, it causes something else to happen, right? Like if I were to if I were to increase this goblin's damage, what would I do? I would waste my time. That's it. There would be no perceivable difference in the player's experience fighting the 2-star goblin. If I doubled the 2-star goblin's damage, it would be completely unnoticeable to players, even though numerically that seems like a huge change. Making the goblin go from doing 400 damage to 800 damage, that seems so relevant. Like, that's a huge noticeable thing. 400 to 800, big number, whoa. But in reality, it's completely irrelevant. And that's the problem with obsessing about numbers, is you'll trick yourself constantly. And it's so easy to think that you can just sit down, make a chart, plan out a linear progression system, and that it's gonna feel good. And when you first do it, and when other players first do it, they might experience that as well. But in the long run, you're gonna encounter all of the problems that I've been articulating. That's just how it is. So you have to provide other forms of immersion aside from the numbers going up thing. And in order to do that, you have to understand that players are inherently suffering. They're seeking comfort. So what comforts can you bring them? How can the game do that? And most importantly of all, how can the game encourage and influence players to converse with other players? A game that inspires a player to go online and post on a forum or watch a YouTube video and write a comment is doing its job. Because every moment that you interact, every video that you watch on YouTube of another person talking about a game or playing a game, you are increasing your immersion in that universe through the guts of it, the social element that is the true thing behind immersion. I guess really there's two things going on. There's the first, the let's call it the deep truth, which is that the socialization element, the interactions with other humans, is what causes the immersion in the video game. But then there's the even deeper truth that that's only true because we are fundamentally lonely and we feel alone, and many of us suffer, so we reach for comfort. And that makes the social element true. I don't think that the social element is just true because humans are social creatures. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that humans are social creatures, and I know what that means. But I'm pretty sure that the social element in video games is as powerful as it is, particularly among young people. Young males in particular. I'm not saying it's not women and it's not others. I'm just saying that young males are in general more often in the situation where video games can become a source of comfort to their pain than other demographics. I'm not saying it's impossible. Absolutely not. Especially on the server, like half the people who play are older women and these things. Not half the people, but people are older, and half the people who play are female, right? Whereas in gaming in general, that's not the case, right? There's a lot more males depending on the game, but it also depends because there's tons of female gamers. But if you look at demographic information, either it's lying or a lot of stuff is actually dominated by men. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that women don't play video games, because they absolutely do. And especially a game like Valheim, it has a strong female player base compared to other video games. But that's not necessarily normal. And I don't think it has anything to do with men and women as like their psychology. It has to do with suffering. It has to do with the nature of which young men find themselves in. It is a reality that puts video games as one of the more convenient sources of comfort. And if you understand all these things, then you can start to imagine why it's so fulfilling to develop for people who are playing. because it starts to open this can of worms and enables you to start understanding why people behave the way that they do. Because if you don't understand on a fundamental level that people are, well, that players are people and people are suffering, then you're going to be confused when people do bad things to each other. And when they do things that get... Here we go. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next live stream of The Path of Magic. We'll be focused more on building stuff. I'll probably do a little bit of off-stream fighting. But then after that, in the next episode, we will just be like building out this area. Because I actually think we've got a good starting point at this point. I've been filling up that nonsense chest as I babble on, right? And we've got a bunch of other building materials. We got Surtling cores from the other base. I brought them over here, along with some other resources. So I'd say we are ready to get building in the next episode. So I'll see you there. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate your time, effort, and attention. If you want to support my work, then consider supporting me on Patreon. You can do so. Currently, Panand and teens who play on the server are supporting me, so I really appreciate that. I definitely didn't expect anybody to want to pay me for a Valheim server that is free, but it means a lot that people have had such an experience on it that they want to encourage me. Like, that really means a lot. So thank you, those of you who have supported me, especially Pan and Teens. But even if you don't become a Patreon, it doesn't really matter. Like, just playing on the server is supportive. Telling me about your experiences, I learn a lot, and this brings so much value into my life personally. From a fulfillment perspective, it allows me to do something I've wanted to do for decades, but I couldn't figure out how to get started making games that people are playing. And like, I know Valheim isn't my game, that's fine, I don't care. I just want to be making games that people play, making stuff in games that people use, because I can tell how I'm learning a lot every single day from these things happening. And that has made a big difference in how I feel about my life. I don't feel that I'm wasting time. I don't feel that I have messed up. I feel happy that I'm able to do what I care about. And that's it. I don't need anything more out of life. And if it wasn't for people who play on the server and are interested, I wouldn't be able to behave this way. So thank you. I really do genuinely appreciate it. And if you want to support my work in other ways, and you want to do some of these things and, you know, maybe do your own development, then consider renting a Valheim server using my link, JP Valheim. You can set up a BepNX server really easily with Zap hosting, and I've got loads of tutorials showing you everything you need to know to get it to a point where you have EWP, you can adjust mechanics, and then you can just add text files to your server that adjust the experience for everybody on the server. It's an absolute blast, and I highly encourage you to get into it. If you're interested in building and world building in Valheim at all, this is a great way to go about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.